Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us again for our Juice Technologies office hours. Again, we're hosting these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. My name is Matthew Tillias. I'm a customer success manager here. I have Keith and Justin on with me. I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm Keith, CEO of Juice Technologies. Thanks for joining us. Justin?
And I'm Justin, digital marketing specialist. Thanks everyone for coming.
Yep. So Justin will be monitoring the chat. If you guys don't feel comfortable asking your questions out loud, he'll be happy to either ask them for you or get us involved there. Just some quick reminders before we start. This is to talk about our Quickbase add-ons, Juice Technology add-ons. If you have a question, if you use the Zoom controls, you'll see the reactions. You can just raise your hand in there so we can kind of keep this somewhat orderly. And we'll try to keep this to 5 to 7 minutes per question, depending on what the topic is. We'll see that go through, and everyone's going to get a recorded copy of this. Secondly, we do have a spotlight topic today, and that's exact forms plus batch processor, and that's generating bulk documents. But we're going to get into that after your guys' questions today. We want to have you guys ask your questions first, so we make sure we hit upon everyone's needs before we jump into the spotlighted topic. So without further ado, I'm just going to let you guys jump in. If anyone has questions right now, we'd love for you to start us off. Don't be shy. And if not, we can go into our spotlighted topic. However, we do want to make sure we're getting to everyone's questions.
It's always tough being the first one, but just, if you have something you want to share. And one thing too, if you do ask a question, you can certainly share your screen to be a little bit more detailed and explain the question. Just know that since we are recording this, if you want to share your screen, just be careful that you're not going to share anything that you don't want anybody else to see.
Yep, that's a good point, Keith. This is being recorded, so. All right. Seems like we're a little shy today in the chat, and that's totally fine. So Keith, maybe it would be best then to start us off hot with talking about the bulk processing. And again, if you guys think of questions or have questions as they come along, feel free to either throw them in the chat or just raise your hand and ask. You have no issues unmuting yourself either. All right, I'll stop sharing, Keith. Yep.
Okay. All right, so I have an application here that I pulled out of the library. It's just a simple estimate application, and I used this one last week, and I already have it set up to use Exact Forms Plus, and I actually set it up last week to use our Exact Forms Plus batch processor single document automation. But this week we want to take it a little bit deeper and go into when you want to generate multiple documents in a batch. So in this case, I have an estimates table. And what if I want to generate?
Well, Keith, I actually cannot see your screen, just so you know.
What screen are you seeing?
I'm seeing Lenovo.
Oh, okay. So I shared the wrong one. Stop share. How about that?
Perfect.
Okay. Sorry about that. So again, here's my estimates application, has an estimates and line items. I set this app up to use Exact Forms Plus. It's also using the Exact Forms Plus batch processor to generate a single document when, let's say, something happens in the app. But today I want to show you how I can generate multiple estimates with a single button click. In this case, if I have a report of estimates, and this is what I created a simple report called pending estimates. So I have 3 estimates that are pending. And, you might have 50 estimates that are pending. Maybe you have 100 estimates that are pending. I'm going to do this in a smaller chunk here. But so the first thing I did was I created a report, and I filtered it simply by status is pending, as you can see. The report ID is QID7. So if you look up here in the URL bar, you can see that the QID is 7. So every report gets its own QID. So if I went into list all, QID is 1. But in this case, my report that I'm focusing in on today is pending estimates QID 7. So I want to set up Exact Forms Plus so that I can set this application to use the Exact Forms Plus batch processor, so I can click a button and generate any estimates that are filtered by this report. So I'm going to log into the cloud first, and to get to the cloud, you can log in from our main website, juicetech.com. We do recommend sometimes you store that link on your dashboard. I didn't do that in my case, but you can always store that link on your dashboard so that you can get to it quickly. So I'm going to log into the Juice Cloud. I have my ID and password already saved. So I'm using my Builder account. And again, our Juice Cloud shows all the different add-ons we have and which ones are active and which ones I could start a trial for. But I already have Exact Forms Plus Batch Processor active in that application. So I'm going to click here. And here I can see all the other applications that are using it, the batch processor. But the app that I'm interested in is my Office Hours app. And I want to set up another table. Even though I want to set up the same table because estimates is already set up, I'm going to set it up again. So I click set up another table. So right now a wizard pops up, and it knows what application that we're pointed at because it was the one I clicked the button next to. So it's going to show a drop down of the tables. So I want to set up the estimates table, and I want to set it up to do bulk document generation. Now, since I already have Exact Forms Plus set up to do single document creation, I already have some fields I could take advantage of. So if I want to, when I generate all of the documents together, I want to store each individual one on the estimates table. And I'm going to choose the same field that I created when I set up Exact Forms Plus single document. I could create a new field if I wanted to, but I'm going to use the same one. And I'm going to do the same thing for the datetime field. And remember, I talked about the report ID that I wanted to use. So I'm going to select the report, and I'm going to choose pending estimates. That is report ID number 7. And I'm going to show you why that's important when we show after the setup is done. So I'm going to use an existing template since I already have my estimate template in the app. And I'm going to quickly go out to the app. In the document templates table, I already have a template set out there that I want to use. And this happens to be record ID number 1. So that's the one that I'm going to use in the wizard. Here, where'd the wizard go?
Third tab.
There we go. Sorry about that. So there's template 1, and then I want to merge all of the files together into a single file as well. So I'm going to generate each individual estimate, store each individual estimate file, PDF file, and I'm going to create a merged file. So I'm going to call it pending estimates. So now I gathered all the information that I wanted, and I'm pretty comfortable that I'm done. I'm going to hit the finish button. What's happening now is we're going to create 2 new tables in this app and a bunch of fields in those tables and a relationship between those tables. And I'll show you when we're done. So again, at the end, it tells you that it created the 2 tables, batch processing and batch processing logs. It also set up the estimates table. And this is an important one here because the way we're going to fire the batch processor to run is through an email notification. So I'm just going to right click and open this in a new tab because that's my help site. I'm going to get to that in a minute because that's what I'm going to have to create in order to fire the batch processor. So I'm good here. I'm done. I can click on the estimates table if I wanted to go right to the app, or I could just close this window and go back to my app this way. And I did it that way because I want to show you that originally we had 5 tables. When I refresh, you're going to see we added 2 new tables, a batch processing table and a batch processing logs table. The logs table is basically it's an activity table showing you every time you ran the batch processor. So if I go to my batch processing table, I'm going to add a new record. And I'm just going to give it a name, pending estimates batch. But you notice we created a bunch of fields in that table as well. And the reason why I showed you why it's important to highlight that report ID is because we create this field here, and I'm going to go into it a little closer. This is our batch arguments field. So this is actually what gets sent into our batch processor to execute. And you can see here it's sending an MSQ ID equals 7. So that's the report that I selected during the wizard. And so you can always change that if you want to use a different report. or you can make this a variable if you want to use a different report. But for now, I'm going to leave it like that. I'm going to go back into my ad record. And I'm just going to save this. So really, to run exact forms plus batch process, you have to click this button. But when I click this button, what's going to happen is it's going to update this trigger field. And I'm going to set up an email notification to be fired when that trigger field is updated. So I'm going to go back and really the batch processor email notification that the help site that I showed you before is going to show you how to do that step by step. So typically what I do is I copy this to my other screen and I'll just follow along in the steps on my other screen. I'm going to leave it on this one as well. But it's basically, if you go through this in step one, you're going to create the email notification. So I'll quickly do that. And I'm creating an email notification for the batch processing table that was just created. So I do new email notification. It has to be an open email notification. So if you follow along, and actually, Justin, did you post that link in the chat just in case people want to follow along?
I was just about to say, anyone who wants to follow along, the link is in the chat to that help site page. So
he's just giving you a link to this if you wanted to follow along with what I'm doing. So basically, I'm going through the bulk document creation option, which is in the batch processing table, click creating an email notification. So again, I'm going to say an open email notification. I'm going to give it a name called EFP batch. You can call it whatever you want. And the email address that we need to send in order to fire exact forms plus batch processor, you can pull it right out here. So I'm just going to copy that and put it right in my email notification. Make sure I don't have any extra spaces, which I did. And also I'm going to copy myself too. Just so you know, you should copy yourself, just especially when testing, just so you know that the email address, the email notification is firing when you want it to. So the next thing you need to do is say, I want this to fire when a batch processing record is modified and when the following field, the trigger field that I pointed out, is changed. And one more thing, we want to say when the trigger field contains the value, the word requested. And I'll show you why we're going to do that. So we're going to next choose custom message, and you're going to give it a name, and I'm just going to call it EFP batch processor. And I like to put the company name in there too. And we recommend you do that so that we know who's trying to run it, just in case there is any issues. We can easily see, hey, someone's running it, and this was the email notification that we got, and it's for this customer. You can name it whatever you want, but we just kind of recommend that. The next thing you want to do is you want to pull this EFP arguments field, the batch arguments field. Now that field was created on our table. I'm going to just open this up in another window here. In our batch processing table, there was a field called batch arguments. So again, this is what gets passed into the batch processor so that we know what to do. We know what table, what application, what client, what template, and what files to create. So around here. So now when the record is modified, the trigger field contains this value, the arguments are going to get passed in, and you can quickly preview that just to take a look at it. One thing we want to highlight, and we highlight in the help site, is it must say type equals EFP batch. We create that for you, so it should, but any older customers, if you already have batch processes set up, you might not have this in there. If you didn't, all you would have to do is type in a comma type equals EFP batch, or you can actually modify this field and put it in there. But anyway, so you're just going to send the arguments in, and that's going to tell our batch processor what to do. So I'm going to just save this now. So that email notification is active as well, so we want to make sure it's green. And I'm going to exit out of here. I have my record saved, so when I click this button, it's going to update this field, like I said before. And it's actually going to update it to have the word requested in it. That's why I said in email notification, we want to make sure that we only fire the email notification when the trigger field has the value requested in it. What we also do is we append the timestamp to it so that we know when it was actually done, so you can track along with that. So in my office hours estimates table, in my report, pending estimates. When I click that button, it's going to execute based on the records filtered in this report. And one other thing you'll see is there's a view records button. Before you click this button, you might want to always check that and say, okay, what am I going to process? Okay, I'm going to process that. I'm good. I'm happy with it. I'm going to process 3 documents, and they're all going to get stored again in these fields. And when it's all said and done, it's going to store a final document in our batch processing table, right in our merged field down here.
Now, Keith, I think this might be a good time, since we're basically at the point to execute the batch. Does anyone have any questions about what they've seen so far? I just want to make sure everyone's following along. Keith, you've done a great job of explaining. And one thing that I've always seen from feedback is people get very nervous when they see the batch processing arguments. And I just want to make sure people understand that that's not something you necessarily need to change that often. That's built for you for a reason.
But it's also very similar to the button code. Like if you look at these, they look very familiar. Client ID, app ID, template ID. If you go back to the estimates table, our exact forms plus button itself to generate a single document, if we took a look at the code behind that, it's very similar. Client ID, app ID, template ID. So we use the same parameters that we pass into the web version of exact forms plus into the batch version. So if we don't have any questions, I'm going to click the button and we're going to run this. So again, I'm going into the batch processing table. I'm going to click this button. It's going to update this field. It's going to fire the email notification to our batch processor. It might take about 30 seconds or so to fire the process itself. And when it's all said and done, we're going to have a batch processing log here. If we had any errors, we'll see them in here. And when we're done, we're going to have a file in each one of these. And we're also going to have a file in the merged file here. So I'm going to click that button now. So it just updated this field. And that's just a simple API edit record. That's not anything that we do specifically. That's a Quickbase command. So it's really executing an API edit record. And if you do have application tokens turned on in your application, you will have to supply one here. And I can answer questions on that after the fact. But while this is running, all you have to do is click the refresh button. Or you can go off and have a cup of coffee and come back if you're processing maybe hundreds of documents. You can also set up an email notification that when this gets updated to send you an email notification to say, hey, the process ended and it's completed. And we can see that it did complete. One thing that I like to do in this field here is I like to look at the list all report instead of the record picker. And I also like to do that for the errors table. Whoops. Because it gives you a little bit more information. So it says, okay, we process completed. We processed 3 documents. This is the time it took. Really didn't take long at all. And that's the name of the template that we worked with. Here's the final merged file. So this should have 3 estimates in it. So it has estimate number 4, page 1. Page 2 has estimate number 1, because I didn't really sort them any which way. I could have. And if I sorted them in the report, they would have came out in the order that the report is sorted in. So we have number 4, then number 1, and then number 5. Again, very simple template. I didn't go crazy on the template. But if I close this and I go back to this report, if I refresh the report, I have 3 individual PDFs. Again, it was 4, 1, and 5 because that's the way I had it sorted. We updated the date field. And again, each one is an individual PDF just for that particular estimate. So obviously it only has 1 page. And the merged file has all of the pages. So it has a page for every one of these. Now, obviously they could have been bigger exact forms plus documents. They could be multiple pages. It's not a problem. We can put them all back together into one. As long as the overall file of the overall size of the merged file is not greater than 75 meg, Quickbase can handle it. If it's bigger than 75 meg, we have other ways to handle that. We can save it to Amazon S3 or Dropbox, but for now, this file happened to be 157K. Obviously, it was only 3 pages, so it's not a big deal. Now, if there was an error, we would have seen that here. We should insert an error record there, but for the most part, that is how we generate multiple documents with our exact forms plus batch processor. Questions?
thought that was pretty good, Keith.
Thanks, Matt. If we don't have any questions on that, I mean, we can certainly take other questions that you might have come up with while you were sitting in the background waiting.
Well, I know that all of you guys are here because you have some sort of questions, and I know some of you guys are my clients. So if you have something, now's the time.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Hey, sorry about that. Yeah, I was just taking it in. Matthew, I know I've been working with you on getting Courier set up here, so I've been doing that while I had some time, just because I wanted to be able to stick my nose into the office hours. I don't have any questions in specific because we're only doing a very small portion of work or trying to realize that work in Courier alone right now. But I did want to say thank you for the demonstration. I was able to follow along. It was very clear. I do appreciate seeing the additional features and the execution of those features. So thank you, Keith. My only ask would be at the end, Matthew, if you don't mind, I just want to grab some of your time to be able to finish the Courier setup so I can end my enrollment knowing that it's set up as best as it can be.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we have left to do for your setup is an email notification from within Quickbase. And it's actually going to be very similar to what Keith demonstrated for the batch setup. One of the only few differences with that is we're changing the processor that we're sending to be QB Courier. And I can definitely go over that with you. I mean, it might be worth going over an email notification here since we have time, and you did ask a question, which we do appreciate.
Yes, so most of our batch processors, Courier is really considered a batch processor because it runs in the background on servers, but all of our batch processors are fired by email notifications. And the way we know which one we should be sending it to is we change the email address for each one. So you'll be sending to a Courier email address as opposed to an EFP batch processor email address.
Yep.
Actually, and that's how the work is dispatched from Quickbase, our Quickbase to your guys at the emails to be able to execute the appropriate work. Understood. I definitely think there's a lot of purchase in this based on what we had originally signed up for. I was just dismayed to find that it hadn't been used when I come aboard, so I was trying to get it back up board and at least get it assessed because I think there's value in the other plugins, but right now it's kind of a sunk cost aspect, just trying to recover what we had not utilized.
So Keith, for some reason my help site does not seem to be loading. So any chance you'd be able to, that is what I was looking for, the clicking to create an email notification, but just for Courier.
Do we have one for Courier?
I believe we do. It's just my help site is not responding at the moment.
We also have a help, we have a help video in Courier as well.
Yeah, I'd seen the video. I'd taken a look
Okay.
at that. I know the modifications and features are always being added to. I was hoping to take some time at the end if Matthew was available, if you had time, just to be able to finish the setup and be able to say that this is the working product. Whatever I do from there is built upon that. But no, I do appreciate it. I want to at least lean forward in this. I figured you guys are, partnership in some of what we do here. I just wanted to get it started first because this is, again, not something that I got the ball rolling with and apparently it got dropped. And just want to see the tools utilized. I think you guys have a great use of the Quickbase platform to be able to export a lot of this stuff. Exactly. You said through all batch and emails. But I can reserve anything else for the end. I don't want to interrupt the office hours. So if anyone else has any questions, I know there's other folks in the chat. So I'll just I'll wait for you guys.
Yeah,
Great, thanks, Braden.
appreciate that.
Anybody else? Anything, even if you wanted me to go a little deeper into something that you saw in the demo that I gave, if something was confusing and you want a little clarity on it, please jump in. I do think we're having a problem with the help site right now, though. I don't think things are,
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on.
it always happens when you're,
When you need it.
yeah.
Well, I think we might want to go into Courier then, as it does not seem like anyone else has questions. And again, you do not have to ask your question live. If you are shy and you do not want to, put your mic on, you could type it out, and we can get back to you that way.
And I didn't want to interrupt office hours, but no, this wouldn't be something I want to be able to share on the screen or have recorded if you don't mind, just based on the data that
That's
we have.
okay.
And it's only my aspect as the project manager. I'm not the full, custodian of the data, so I don't want to make any liberties with it that I shouldn't.
Yep. Well, one of the things that I would just show is, I'll steal the share for a second since I have it up. What you will need to end up doing.
This is in our demo app, by the way, so it's not in your app, right?
Sorry. So yes. So I'm in our demo courier application, and within the settings of that, having an email notification here is what fires courier. So each one of these is actually sending a different email notification, which is going to trigger a different courier configuration itself. But if I click into this one, this is just a sample of how it's set up, and it's very similar to what Keith was showing for Exact Forms plus batch. You're going to name it whatever is convenient for you or whatever you're trying to send out. You're going to be sending to QB Courier at courier.quickbasetools.com. That email address can be found either on our help site or at the last page of the courier configurations. And then, like Keith was saying, you want to have a trigger field. So right now we have whenever a record is modified in the Exact Forms plus date changes, because we're doing this in tandem with Exact Forms plus, the email field is not equal to blank, which is important for courier because we don't want to be sending emails to blank addresses. That does cause errors. So whatever the to email is not equal to blank, as well as when the Exact Forms plus date is not equal to blank. Then, as Keith was showing, we have a custom message here, which will be found at the last page of the courier configuration, which just is doing your client ID, as well as the configuration ID, and then just record ID, since this is triggered from the record you're trying to send from.
And just so I'm understanding all this, and Matthew, I'm sorry to interrupt you, man. I'm intimately familiar with this. Has this always been how you guys have used it? Because I see nothing legacy from previous development here, and I'm still a new guy in this organization. So again,
yep, for triggered emails, this is how we've done it. In the past, you may have done on demand or scheduled. Those two options do not need email notifications. This is for individual records being sent. So if I want to send an email to you and Justin and Keith, but all individually, this is how you do it.
And where do you normally see a need for on demand for this sort of leveraging Quickbase? And I hate to sound ignorant to it, but is there a value to that versus trigger or the schedule for
absolutely
weeklies?
So just like Keith was showing also with the Exact Forms plus batch, if you had a report of quotes and you had all the quotes for July and you're coming into August, and August 1st you want to send them out, and you have a group of 50 quotes you want to send, but you don't want to press send via courier on each one of those, we would have the on-demand option where you press one button and it sends it to a group of emails, all individually.
Okay, and that'd be to execute on the courier side of the house versus the triggers, and any sort of schedules would be fire and forget as well. So it's less fire and forget.
Yeah.
Kind of thinking out loud for the project needs on my end. Okay, I want to set up the courier thing most immediately, so I don't know if we want to be able to end this or just wait till after hours or office hours. Sorry. And if you don't mind, I think I got most of the work done on my end. I just want to get your eyes on it, Matthew.
Yep.
Because I need to, and this is not your guys' problem. I'm glad I got it working with the help of our IT guys. It's just something that we had a lot of laps on. I want to be able to address my organization. So yeah, let me know when time works for you. I'll drop off the call now. Send me a link to whatever we can get together and have it done here before the end of the day.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Braden.
All right. So we still have quite a few people here in the meeting. I'm sure that there may be questions. That's what this time is for. Obviously, you just saw with a client that I'm currently working with, Braden, there are little intricate different things with each individual use case. So we do want to kind of talk about each use case individually with you and help you not just give a general overview like Keith did for batch. So if you have individual questions, now is the time.
I think our help site just basically came back. So
Okay, well, that's good.
let me just share my screen quick. There's a section of our help site for Exact Forms Plus batch processor. Not only, we showed you before that where the email notification creation is, but there's also, sorry, in the batch processor, there's an overview too that kind of goes through what we did, what we created, talks about the application setup, and there's formula URL parameters that are the same for Exact Forms Plus and batch process. So if you went to Exact Forms Plus and you looked at the URL parameters, this explains every one of those parameters that's in the EFP arguments field. And they're the same as they are in the web version of Exact Forms Plus. So if you weren't sure what some of those things were and how to set them in the different values they can have, you can always come to our help site and get that information. Like you'll see, there's a complicated one. If you wanted to change the file names of those files, there's a way that you can actually use fields from the table estimates in our case, and you would pass in parameters like this instead of giving it a simple merged file name like this, pending estimates. I could have changed that by passing in a special file name, even in the individual files themselves. If I wanted to use the same name that my button was using, I could do that. I just got to set up the file name parameter a little differently, but it can be done. So if you didn't want to have a global name, EFP batch file, which is the file name, you can do it a different way. Justin posted that in the chat, just in case you were interested.
Keith, maybe since we're on batch, and I know this is something that Justin has shown, do you think you'd be able to show like a template picker field, something along the lines of changing it between template 1 and template 2?
Yes, we can do a couple different ways. So right now, this batch processing arguments is hard coded to use template number 1. But let's say I had a different template. And maybe I want to vary the template based on the name of my batch processing record. So I could create a variable called, and let's just put an if set. So I'm creating a variable because I want to change and vary that template ID. So let's say I say if name is equal to estimate or pending estimate. Then I want to use 1. Otherwise, I want to use 2. Or maybe I want to say, another case, if name is equal to invoices, use 2. But for this case, I'm just going to simply make it use 1 or 2. So that's a variable. So now I want to change this variable to, instead of hard coding it to 1, I'm going to use that variable. So now when I save this, the first record is going to be, since I changed the name, pending estimate. What did I call it?
Estimates, I think you had S.
Let's see. Pending estimates, then use 1, otherwise use 2. Add a space at the end. So pending estimates going to use 1, but if, let's say, if another record was invoices. So you see how it would vary and use number 2. So if I did have another batch processing record in here, and it was invoices, and I want to use the invoice template, I can change that whole variable so that I have some type of case statement in there, maybe, so that I use the proper template for my batch. But that's one way to do is to put a variable right inside of the EFP arguments field.
Great. Yeah, I think that's really important. A lot of clients ask that, and I feel like that tags right along with this video. Cool. All right.
And you
Right.
can do the same thing for the other fields. So obviously, if you're using invoices, you're probably using an invoices table. So you can vary the other variables. You can vary the variables inside of the arguments field. You know, there's other ways to do it. There's a bunch of different ways to implement it. You can have a duplicate batch arguments field as well if you wanted. Instead of if you didn't want to put all the variables in this field, you can duplicate this field and have an invoice batch arguments field and an estimates batch argument fields. I don't recommend that because then you can have a lot of different batch arguments fields. I like to keep it in one field if I can and just add the variables to the top. So I might want to vary the query ID. I might want to vary the file attachment field ID in the table that I want to save it in, the date field, etc.
Awesome. All right. Well, as we continue to wind down, there is still clients here who may have questions. I know I've asked now 3 times, but if there is questions, you know, please do ask. You can put them in the comments or in the chat. You do not need to ask on person. You know, if you want to say something along the lines of, I'd like to hear more about text my QB, or I want to learn more about multi-file attachment, we'd be happy to demonstrate those. Just as a note, next week we will be doing another topic. So the past 2 weeks we've been highlighting exact forms plus batch, doing an auto document generation, which we did last week, and then bulk document generation today. So if there's no more further questions, we will wrap it up for today and hopefully see you again next week. Just one last moment for that. All right, seems like no one else has any questions. One thing also is we have started doing a new survey after this. So everyone who attended is going to get a survey. It's anonymous. We'd really appreciate if you can fill that out. It's going to take you about a minute just to get some feedback on this and what you'd like to see from it in the future. As we continue to, you know, grow with this program, we hope that, you know, we see people coming in and out and have questions to, you know, better utilize our add-ons. Keith, Justin, any comments?
No. Thank you very much for attending.
Yep, awesome. All right, thanks everyone.